Only love can save us now. Only love.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're tuned into Moving Forward, a weekly program produced by the Bay and Grandstown Advancement Association. It is our objective to look at issues that are seriously impacting our nation, our communities, our region, and indeed our world. This evening we have as a special guest for the second consecutive program, because no program is large enough to accommodate Fred Munnings.
Well, the two of us together.
This is the second program, and we're talking about crime. And just before the break, Fred was establishing the basis of our problem, which is the failure in the home environment, the foundation. Yeah. And that extends into the neighborhood, into the community, yes, into the nation.
Yes.
And that's the source of our problem. Now, my question, Fred, with parents obviously failing, for whatever reason, does the state have a responsibility to, as they say, pick up the slack? What should the state be doing?
Well, first of all, CB, as you said, we have failed. I think we have failed, and we failed for a number of reasons. Firstly, we have failed because we've created a society of complete dependency. I'm sure you're old enough to remember when we were growing up. We were under very oppressed conditions in society by the then oligarchy. But we had what? Discipline. CB, I remember vividly under the colonial system, when you would go into the movie theater at the Capitol, before the movie was played, they played the national anthem of England, God Save the Queen. Every person in the theater would stand up, and if they had a hat on, they'd take it off. I don't know back then if you were under the same discipline you're under now, but I used to go to the movie a lot. Even when Blimp and them used to keep my bicycle outside. You know Blimp and them.
But of course, that's the cinema now.
You had to stand up
cinema.
at attention, CB, without anyone telling you when they played the night. Why? This was a discipline. This was a practice of respect for that national anthem. I see Bahamians today in public places, very prominent people, and our Bahamian national anthem is played, they talking, they got their hat on, they're not standing at attention. Why? No discipline. Getting back to basics. We must have discipline, CB. With freedom comes responsibility. Now that we claim to be an independent nation and we are responsible for our own welfare, we have created a society of dependency.
But who is going to help to inculcate in this group of persons the discipline, the self-respect? That's what I want to get to.
Laws.
We've got to implement,
once you establish the laws,
and we've got to enforce the laws.
CB, you're old enough to remember again. I remember when the first red light was placed on Wolf Road and East Street at the intersection there. We all gathered to watch it turn on for the first time. What does the red light mean? Red signifies stop. Amber signifies if you see it as a caution, you start to slow down to stop. Green means to go. How often do you see our people even today? They run the red light and it doesn't exist. The reason you have that red light or that stoplight is so that the society is governed by the law which it represents.
But what should the government do to enforce that?
Well, if you break the law, then you must pay the penalty for breaking the law. In that case, that's a traffic infraction. It may be a fine. But I see those who are supposed to be the law keepers breaking the law, number one, and when they see others break the law, as if it's never happening. You see, the law makers and those who are supposed to be the peacemakers and the guardians of the law breakers, they have to enforce the law.
Let's expand it a little bit. We see, particularly in the urban areas, people walking the street,
Yes.
using obscene language.
Throwing trash all over. That's an infraction,
Exactly.
you know.
So my point
Remember the
is,
£5 note?
Oh, yes.
The £5 word?
yes,
You,
oh, yes.
You
oh,
know what I
yes.
mean?
Of course.
You know how it came about?
Of course. But
If you use that kind of language,
we've got to enforce these
gotta
laws.
enforce
So you
the
see,
law.
if you do not enforce little laws,
they
then-
end up being big laws.
exactly. So what we are saying is the state needs to address
No question
this
about that.
with more than talk.
No question about it.
And some of the solutions that we throw out, for example, we should be having community courts.
There's no question.
The judicial system, Fred, is clogged, has been for many, many years.
Yeah.
As a result, the law enforcers do not pay much attention to what they call those little crimes. Obscene language,
Absolutely.
vagrancy,
Absolutely.
littering,
That's right.
verbal assaults.
And then there's another aspect of it. There are those who are in society who may be of influence.
Oh, of course.
If them or one who they know or a member of their family break the law, well, they call up the lawmaker or the law keeper and they say, hey, get rid of this parking ticket for me, or do this or do that. And they accommodate it. That is wrong.
There's no question about that.
There's no one above the law.
That's right. And we have to enforce law. See, we maintain
Yeah.
that if a law is broken,
Yes,
no matter how minor it is considered to be,
absolutely.
that person must be held accountable.
If not, remove the law.
The thing is,
Yeah.
the present judicial system cannot accommodate that,
That's right.
that kind of implementation.
Mm-hmm.
We've been saying for a long time that the government should introduce community courts.
Yeah.
Courts that deal with what we call minor infractions, not empowered to issue custodial sentences, but fines, community service, and other alternate ways of punishment. We've got a large number of retired judiciary personnel,
Yeah.
senior police
Who can very
officers,
easily
who can very
implement such a
easily,
policy.
and many of them would do it for a stipend as opposed to a full salary. This is community service.
Yes.
We maintain that if a person breaks a law, no matter how minor it is, today, within 48 hours, that person should be called before the bar.
CB, you would recall, I think it was in New York. What was the governor's name up there? This fellow, very popular fellow.
Well, he's the mayor, Giuliani.
Giuliani.
The
that's
mayor.
right, the mayor.
The mayor,
But
Giuliani.
he took a position.
Yes.
No tolerance.
No tolerance, yes.
No tolerance.
It's
If
called
you
a broken window principle.
If you break the law, no matter who you are, you're going to pay the penalty.
Simple as that.
Yeah? If you do the crime, you must do the time.
But you see, Freddie, we do not have, at this stage, in our opinion, the right strategy to address that. For example, when these so-called minor infractions are
Yes.
made, there are no law enforcers around.
Absolutely.
And they spot a police car coming with all the lights
Absolutely.
shining,
Yep.
so they
And that's
fade into the shadows.
And so that's why we got to do
we
something.
need boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground, but also what we need to talk about, CB, is crime prevention.
But of course, but I'm saying, now we reach the point they're
No.
committing the crime.
No, we agree, we establish that. If you commit the crime and you're found guilty, then you must pay the price of committing.
But Freddie, the point I'm making is we must make sure that
Absolutely.
they are called upon to pay, but we don't see that.
And
In these communities, Freddie, what happens? Once they commit the crime, they just make themselves scarce.
because we have created that kind of
But
society.
that's what I'm
CB.
saying. We must.
You see, Mr. Glover and people like that, Mr. Lou Adderley, and these were people of integrity. See, you got to first have integrity, you know, even in the church.
Yes.
And I look to the church. You see, when you pass the church even, you know, there was a sense of reverence. Even when you pass the church, even if church ain't in, you walk past the church, there's a sense of reverence. Today, we don't have any respect for self. The self-respect, the self-esteem, the self-worth that we were taught is not there. And so therefore, CB, to your point, we allow us to break the laws that we create to keep the order.
Well, that's the very point. When a person
Yeah.
fails or refuses to govern himself or
That's
herself, when they refuse to obey the laws, then they must be made
Absolutely.
to obey
And that's
the
why
laws.
society needs to step in.
That's right. But
Society needs to step in and impose the, and we hear the commissioner speak to it all the time, you know. But the commissioner said just recently, when they go out and they catch the fella and they put him in front of the courts, 2 weeks later the fella's out
Yeah.
doing something else.
That-
when the
that
court
is true.
should take the position, man, if you do, say, for example, we don't make guns in this country. And there's a 2 or 3 parts of this thing. First of all, our government should call upon those countries who make these guns, and they must take some of the responsibility of having these guns come into our country.
Yes.
We don't make guns in the Bahamas. Huh? That's one point. The second point is, if you are found with a gun, TB, for whatever reason, without the proper licensing to have such, then you need to pay the penalty. And the penalty needs to be such that it's going to impact you to such a degree that you're going to think twice before you even take the chance.
stick a pin there, Freddie.
Yes.
I have had this discussion over and over.
Yes.
Crime is a very complex problem.
Yes.
We talk about guns. And a lot of people say, oh, you find a person with a gun, give him 10 years, 15 years. That sounds good. But we have allowed the situation to deteriorate to the point where otherwise law-abiding citizens
Yes.
are so fearful.
That's true.
Many of them having
Well, that's true.
experienced
Yeah.
crime firsthand with
That's
their
another
families.
aspect of it.
So many of them
Yes.
have proceeded to arm themselves
Legally
illegally.
or illegally.
There you go. Now, here's what
Because
you
they
say.
figure, if someone coming at me,
Yeah,
I'm in my home with my family,
self-preservation.
I got to preserve myself.
Right. Now, what I'm saying is the society has allowed
Yeah.
the situation to deteriorate.
I understand
And
it.
so we've got to be careful, for example, when we talk about extended mandatory sentence. No, not you.
And I totally
No,
agree.
not you. But I'm talking about
Yes.
out there on the streets.
No.
You hear this all the time.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is we have a complex problem on our hands.
Because like the government, your first order of business is to protect you and your family.
But of course. And you see,
By any means necessary, as far as I'm concerned. You
There-
come into my house
there you go.
with my family, my daughters and my wife, and I can do what is necessary to protect
Yes.
my family.
But while the law may permit that to a degree, this same individual perhaps extend that mindset to the streets where he carries
So-
his
so
gun,
the-
and then he gets...
therein lies the complexity of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The point is, I think we have focused a lot on the punitive side of addressing the crime. We talk about Giuliani, for example, in
Yes.
New York, and we talk about the no tolerance
Yes.
attitude they took. Broken window principle, where you commit a minor crime and that's it. But what we don't talk about is the hundreds of millions of dollars that they spent in New York. You understand what I'm saying? Creating
the
the right
necessary resources,
environment for people, creating parks, creating bicycle
Now you
paths
come
for
into a
people.
CB. Now you come into the prevention
we don't see
aspect.
that.
Now, but here, and you know, I come from a musical background, and I submit, CB, a lot of the behavior of our young people is influenced by the kind of music we allow them to hear and play. Because you would know, as a man of cultural background, the impact, you're a preacher. And when you get into your cadence of presenting your message, you create an atmosphere where you touch the emotions of people. Music is one of those creative ways by which you touch the emotions of people. And when you are fed a diet, a continuous diet of denigration of your women, of stealing and cutting off the head of the police and all of this kind of negative messages, it's impacting our society. So I submit one of the methods of teaching and this whole word of discipline, you see, if you get into the arts, music, dance, visual arts, sports, these are disciplines. And the word discipline means to what? To teach. To teach one the respect In sports, you have camaraderie. You call it displaying sportsmanlike. Displaying sportsmanlike
attitude
toward
yeah.
each other. You and I could compete fiercely on the field, but when we finish, man, we go have a soda together.
But you see, since we know that people follow leadership, watch what's happening at that level.
Yes.
Opponents, legitimate opponents,
yes.
watch how they behave to each other.
But
the first thing we do is denigrate. Call them names,
look at the highest
ridicule
level.
them,
and sometimes
try to embarrass them.
Sometimes when I even look at the debates in the House of Assembly, they get personal in their attacks.
Yeah.
This is wrong. It's sending the wrong. This is what I mean by subliminal misinstruction. We have to understand the power of responsibility when you are placed in leadership roles. You can't have the fella creating what you call blue-collar crime, corporate corruption, and then expect the fella on the ground.
Well, that's the point.
That is the point.